This week, Sunday, my grandfather, Tzvi Elimelech was nifta. I would like that if there's any aserius, if you should be little nishmas or divrei, I'll say something. Pasuk says, when Yaakov was on his way from Eretz Canaan to Mitzrayim, zok the pasuk, Vayisa Yisrael v'chol ashaloi, vayovoi be'er shova, vayizbach zvachim lelekei aviv Yitzchak. He was makriv karbonos for the Rebbeinu Shalom of his father Yitzchak. So the shaila that we'll ask is, where is Yitzchak coming to over here? There's a Mordechai Meshech Chachma. Meshech Chachma says that Hayos, there was 22 years that Yaakov wasn't by his father Yitzchak. So he was missing that kibbut av of 22 years, and he's on his way to see his son Yosef for the first time after many years. As he was worried as a einish for the fact that he was missing the kibbut av for 22 years. The Rebbeinu Shalom was going to be mesavev that his son Yosef is not going to give him kavod, is not going to respect him. So Memela Yaakov Avinu was makriv lelekei aviv Yitzchak, that this korban should be a kapara for the fact that he wasn't mechaved his father for 22 years, and therefore he wouldn't have to be worried that Yosef won't be mechaved him. This steht in the Meshech Chachma. So repel the Kazakh. Yaakov Avinu was worried about a little extra kavod. He's worried about that Yosef's not going to have the kavod to him. He's missing Yosef's kavod. First felt Yaakov Avinu over here that he's missing Yosef's kavod. So I would like to say that the pshat is another Mordechai Meshech Chachma. In the beginning of Parshas Kedoshim, the pasuk says, as Shabsosai Tishmoiru, Ish Imoy Va'aviv Tiro, as Shabsosai Tishmoiru. That a person has to be fearful of his parents, as Shabsosai Tishmoiru, and keep Shabbos. Zong Chazal, that if a father tells a son not to keep Shabbos or do something which is asur on Shabbos, the halacha is, the pasuk's telling us, don't listen to your father. Don't listen to your father. So, and that's the smichas of the pasuk. So, frek the Meshech Chachma, we all know the Gemara says that if there's a svara of, let's say you have aviv, v'imay, if they tell you to do, if you have aviv v'imay, if your father tells you to do something and your mother tells you to do something, so who's the one that you're supposed to listen to? You're supposed to listen to your father. Why? Because your mother's also mechuyev she'ata v'avicha mechuyavim b'chvoid she'ata v'imecha mechuyavim b'chvoid avicha, because both of you are mechuyev in the covet of your father. So, Frek the Meshech Chachma, why does the pasuk have to tell us a special drasha? That if your father tells you to do something which is neged the Ratzon Hashem on Shabbos, not till Ishim Evav Terov Shalsheles of Mesorah, don't listen to him. You don't need a drasha for that. That's a svara. Atava Avicha Mechuyavim B'chvoid Kainecha. Both you and your father are mechuyev to listen to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So what's the havamina b'chlal that you'd have to listen to your father? Zok the Meshech Chachma Mavel the Kazakh. Zok the Meshech Chachma that when it comes to listening to a father, not only is there ben adam lechavrei, not only is it a mitzvah of kavod esavicha v'esimecha, over the yesod of kavod esavicha v'esimecha, the whole kol atira kula is geboit on this. Why? Because Klal Yisrael, the way the Torah was given over, the way chinuch was given over, is a father gives over to a child. It's a chain. It's a chain that goes from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. And if you don't have that chain intact, then the whole Mesorah and Klal Yisrael is at risk to be lost. If you don't have the chain of a father giving over to a son, then the chain of one thing going over to the next generation is going to be lost. And there's a havamina that if your father tells you not to do something which is asur on Shabbos, that could be, it would be kedai to listen to your father just in order not to break that chain, because if you're breaking that chain, you're risking the whole Mesorah of Klal Yisrael and the Torah being given over to from generation to generation. And therefore, even though there's a svara of Ishim Evav Tiro, even though there's a svara of Atava Avicha, Even though there's a svara that both you and your father are mechuyev to give kavod to the Rebbeinu Shalom, there'll be a havamina that if your father tells you to be over on halacha at Shabbos, you would have to listen to him just because it would be kedai, because if you're not listening to him, then you're breaking the whole Mesorah. You're breaking the capability of chinuch to go over from one generation to the next. That's also ben avon l'makom. That's what he said. Not only relevant chavrei, correct. It's ben avon l'makom as well, because this is relevant to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And Memela, I think the pshat is over here. Zakta Meshech Chachma v'yizbach zvachen l'lekei aviv Yitzchak. When Yaakov was going down to Mitzrayim, Zakta Meshech Chachma, why is he makriv l'lekei aviv Yitzchak? Because he was nervous that Yosef wasn't going to be mechaber him. Yaakov Avinu cared about his own covet. He didn't care about his own covet. The idea was if he didn't have that kibbud av, if he was going to be missing in that kibbud av, it would be missing in that link of the chain, the capability for him to give over from one generation to the next. And Memela, that's why Yaakov was makriv zvachim to mechaper and to make sure that Yosef would be mechaber them. So it's interesting, we find, the Gemara says, Shimon HaMsuni was derish as kol esin shebetayra. Every time that it says a es, he was derish to be married with something until it came to es Hashem Elokecha Tira, and then Rabbi Kiva came, and Rabbi Kiva was married with Talmidei Chachamim. We find also, it says the Pardes Yosef brings down. It says you have the same drashas by es to be married with Talmidei Chachamim. It says the pasuk in Mishlei Tes. It says Kabir es Hashem mehoincha. We learn that over there. Also, es is the Rabbi's Talmidei Chacham zok there, and the same thing the Makar. This is interesting. How do we know there's a din of Shalosh Regalim, right? Shalosh Regalim Shana Yiros es Pnei Hashem Elokecha, to be Oile Regel 3 times, and halacha it's brought down that a person has to be makbul Pnei Rabbi also 3 times in the year. Where do you notice halacha of makbul Pnei Rabbi? Zok the Pardes Yosef is also from es. From Es Hashem Shpon Bashana Es Hashem Elokecha, from that S, when Marabah, that a person has to go be makbul Pnei Rabbi as well. There's a riboy of giving kavod, yira to Rabbi, to Talmud Chacham, is all nilba from Es Hashem to Marabah from the Kvod Hashem. So we usually learn that there's 2 dinim. There's one din of kavod to the Rebbeinu Shalom, and there's another din of kavod to a father, or kavod Talmidei Chachamim. According to what we're saying, it's all one din. It's a ribui in that din of kavod Hashem and being mamshich the Rebbeinu Shalom of the Welt from generation to generation. That's all in the Es Hashem Elokecha. The kavod of his father is relevant to Es Hashem Elokecha. The kavod of Talmidei Chachamim, the kavod of Bnei Torah, which they are mamshich, the chinuch from deiris that go from one generation to the next. That's all nilmal, that's all nechlal in Es Hashem Elokecha, and that kavod that a person has to give the Rebbeinu Shalom, by that itself that is being machabed, Rabbi, Aviv, Talmud Chacham, by that itself he's being mamshich the kavod kutsha berichu of the Welt. The Chassam Sofer says, there's a pasuk that says that by Avram Avinu, the Rebbeinu Shalom told him, L'man asher yitzave es bonav, by Stoim, the Rebbeinu Shalom said, I know I have to tell Avram Avinu about Stoim, L'man asher yitzave es bonav, Bnei Beisai acharav. Zogt the Chassam Sofer, what's the lashon acharav after him? L'man asher yitzave es bonav, Bnei Beisai, his children and his household. What's acharav? Zogt the Chassam Sofer, that what stated in the pasuk there is that a person has to be mechanech his children, give over in a way that it would last after 120. When he leaves the world, you want to know what a real chinuch is? An everlasting chinuch that lasts from generation to generation. That's a chinuch was right to give over. My grandfather, Elimelech, Zichrono Livracha, Waxman, one of the focal points in his life was he was a Talmud of Rabbi Yisroel Chaim Kaplan, Rabbi Reuben Rozovsky, Rabbi Shlomo Hyman. He was in that generation, and every interaction he had with his children, with his grandchildren, with his Ureiniklach, was always saying over things that how they were mechaber, and it's very important for the younger generation to mechaber the older ones. And us as kids and grandchildren, we used to laugh, okay, it's very important, we'll give you kavod Zaidi. And the focal point that he had was this idea that the link of giving over, the capability for a person to give over from one generation to the next, if he wants to ensure that it should be everlasting, is taka to have the emissar racha of Kavod Talmid Chachamim, for Kavod Kibur Avaim, we should all be zeicha to be mamshech b'drachav, to have siyata d'shmaya.